Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for coming. My name is Michael Mann, Chief of Police for the City of Coconut Creek. I will provide you with a statement regarding a recent incident that took place in the Winmore community. On February 22nd at 1:08 a.m., the Margate Coconut Creek Fire Department responded to a 911 call at 1702 Andrews Isles in the Winmore community for a medical incident in the parking lot. On arrival, paramedics encountered a male who was later identified as Calvin Reed. Mr. Reed was observed to be in an agitated, combative, and incoherent state. He had numerous cuts on his arms, hands, and chest, and his clothing was torn and bloodstained. Mr. Reed became more aggressive on the scene, which caused safety concerns for the paramedics who were attempting to help him. This resulted in a request from the paramedics for the Coconut Creek Police Department to expedite their response to the scene. Upon arrival of the officers, the on-scene paramedics relayed their concerns about Mr. Reed's observed condition and aggressive behavior. As the officers approached Mr. Reed to offer him assistance, he became even more agitated. Given Mr. Reed's appearance and behavior, the officers were unsure if they were dealing with a victim of a crime, a suspect of a crime, or a potential baker at a crime. The officers attempted to detain Mr. Reed to determine what happened. As the officers approached Mr. Reed, he exhibited threatening behavior and appeared to be hallucinating. Mr. Reed was repeatedly advised to stop resisting by the uniformed officers, but he refused to comply. Mr. Reed continued to escalate his violent behavior to the extent that Taser use became necessary for the officer's safety as well as for Mr. Reed's own safety. Mr. Reed was subsequently transported to Northwest Medical Center. His family was notified later that day by law enforcement officers as to what occurred. Unfortunately, Mr. Reed passed away 2 days later on February 24th. There is an ongoing internal affairs investigation as well as an ongoing criminal investigation. Once the criminal investigation is concluded, it will be turned over to the state attorney's office. No further information released or questions answered until those investigations are concluded. We appreciate your cooperation and continued patience during this process.
Can you just speak to the larger issue of tasers? There's been some reports that I've seen that the officers in your department are not currently certified on the use of taser.
You know, that's a question. It's part of the investigation. I really can't discuss that at this time. All our officers are certified in the use of taser.
But they have to be recertified, as I understand it.
That's part of the investigation. I can't talk about it at this time.
What about you personally? You're certified on taser, correct?
Yes, I am.
Is your certification up to date?
Yes, it is.
Chief, how many times has this gentleman tased?
I'm sorry, say it
How
again?
many times has Mr. Reed tased?
That's a part of the investigation. I really can't get into that at this
Okay,
time.
Chief, how many officers are we talking about who are involved?
Again, part of the investigation at this point, I'd rather not get into.
Okay, how are the officers on leave or are they still working?
They're working.
Okay, why was the decision for them to still be working?
There was no reason to put him on administrative leave.
Okay, do we know what he was doing in Winmore? He didn't live in Winmore.
Not at this time.
We don't know what he was doing there.
It's a part of the investigation. I really can't discuss at this time.
So you don't know if he was visiting someone?
That's correct.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. And in terms of his, you said that he had cuts and bruises and on his arms and face, and not knowing whether or not he was the victim of a crime or perpetrator of a crime. Are you investigating whether or not he was in fact, in other words, the initial encounter that he had that caused him to be bleeding and the rest of it? Are you investigating that aspect of it to see if there's someone who had assaulted him?
We're investigating all aspects of the incident that involved Mr. Reed.
He made a comment that he looked a certain way, and based on that look, the officers responded to him in a certain manner. What look was that look, and based on that look, why did he need to respond?
I don't really believe I said that. Mr. Reed was, he had cuts on his hands, arms, and chest. and his clothes were torn and bloodstained. That's what they were responding to.
So that's the appearance that you were talking about when you weren't sure what you were dealing with, the cuts on
I'm
him?
sorry, I can't hear you.
That's the appearance you were talking about, that you weren't sure what you were dealing with when you saw cuts on his arms?
Again, maybe I don't understand the question. Could you just come forward a little
The
bit?
appearance that you were talking about, you said he looked a certain way, that you guys thought he was more aggressive. So I think the thing that we're trying to figure out is what kind of appearance does a person who needs medical attention look like, that they have to probably tase the person? Was it because of the cuts on his body and the blood that you felt that he needed to be tased?
When our officers arrived, they encountered a man who again had cuts on his hands, arms, chest, had clothes that were torn and bloodstained. That's the appearance that Mr. Reed had at the time our officers arrived.
Did anybody ever try to handcuff him at the time?
That's part of the investigation. I can't discuss with you at this time.
Can you make any mention about what he was saying, that he can't breathe?
Again, that's part of the investigation. I can't discuss with you at this time.
Chief, are you able to talk about why the officers got involved? Because I'm under the impression that it's not illegal to refuse medical care. If somebody tells a paramedic, I don't want medical care, they have a legal right to refuse them. So can you explain that about why exactly the police were they forcing him to get medical care? Were they trying to encourage him to get medical care?
At this particular moment, when our officers arrived, they encountered a man who had cuts on his hand, was incoherent.
Right.
We didn't know if he was a danger to himself. He had cuts on his chest and arms, and his clothes were torn and bloodstained. That was enough for our officers at that time to get involved.
Can I ask a sort of take a step back question? Why is it taking you almost 2 weeks to finally come forward and release this information? And under what guidance, who guided you to the notion that releasing this information was somehow confidential and exempt when it is in fact a public record?
We were still gathering facts at that particular time. We were trying to correct misinformation right now that got out, and there is no cover. We just, responding to right now. Okay, thank you.
What was the misinformation, sir? Chief?
Chief, is it department
Can you
policy?
provide a copy of the statement you read? Can you
Get it off.